that we're going to have on immigration and the misconceptions around it, and we're being brought to you through the miracle of YouTube, and for those of you who aren't here right now, we will have the so that you can check out what we're going to talk about tonight. And what we're going to talk about tonight, part of our Mythbuster series that we've been having now with Grassroots North Shore. We want to make all of us better able to have discussions of what the reality is, and in some cases, whenever we can, open people's eyes. Two gentlemen from Voces de la France, Guerrera. Did I pronounce that right? Pronunciation.
There you go.
Yeah, and Mario Rodriguez. Talk about ethnic heritage. With Latino names. Marcos introduced himself. He's got quite an interesting background.
Well, I don't want to take up a whole lot of time on me. Enroll my 20-minute speech about me. Just kidding. So we're sitting in Brown Deer,
Right.
The village of Brown Deer, if I'm not mistaken. Right?
Exactly, yeah.
And I was commenting when I was invited to this, but so I'll have to. After doing my high school, got an undergraduate degree in astronautical engineering. Then I joined the Navy, and they decided I was going to be a helicopter pilot. So I flew helicopters for the Navy all over the Gulf Coast and Caribbean. And then I got an MBA at Thunderbird, as we were talking before.
Right.
While I was at Thunderbird, I met and married my wife, who was from Bolivia, so I moved to some kids. I worked in venture capital, and then also worked in cross-cultural communications, entrepreneurship, business strategy.
Back for your wife.
She is half German.
Wow.
So it was culture shock, but she adapted quickly because of her biculturalism.
So this was not her first bratwurst.
No, it was not. Though she still isn't sure that Sheboygan is the bratwurst capital of the world. And since I've been here, I've been working on. I've continued my ways as a small business consultant, so I've been working with a lot of small businesses in the Sheboygan area and abroad. One of my clients became the U.S.'s largest importer of quinoa from Bolivia and Peru.
Wow.
For a while.
Yeah.
So did that. We were an organic fair trade certified outfit, certified as a B Corp as well, for those of you who follow corporate social responsibility. And now I'm part of a marketing communications agency to engaging communities.
Mm-hmm.
So work for companies who are interested in connecting.
Yeah. Great.
On the personal side, my father's from southern Mexico, my mother's from Green Bay. That makes me an ardent Green Bay Packer fan. I was born in Chicago, but grew up in Mexico City. Was in South America for a bit.
Fortunately, there's Packer bars everywhere.
Packers absolutely everywhere. Bolivia, we had a good Packer bar to go to. As I mentioned before, my wife is Bolivian of German descent. We've got 4 kids. My causes are, of course, as you can imagine, what I like to affectionately call brown people. I'm into good and slow food, as you heard from the organic and fair trade
Right,
certified
right, yeah.
quinoa, and I'm passionate about education. Between being a Latin American and not being a Latin American. And I'm a script flipper. I'm a systems thinker and disruptor. And since 2016, I've been a lot more politically active.
Very good. Yeah, no, we need more of that.
So that's me. I don't know if there are any questions about
No,
my background.
no, and you're eminently qualified to be part of this tonight. Mario, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for being here. I believe in 1987, running away from the Civil War for around 32 years. Now I'm a LPR, Law Permanent Resident. I became an activist in 2001 when bosses start, to working to support immigrants, workers, and students. So I was a volunteer for the organization for around 11 years. Now I'm a part of the staff for 5 years.
No, very good. Okay. Yes, and I know that, VOSIS for all those years have been doing some very good work here in Milwaukee. And, thanks to individuals like you who are involved with it, they will continue to do that great work. Also joining us over there is John Gross, who's also with Grassroots North Shore. If you just want to say a couple
issues. Want to protect people as much as I can, participate in that, and also just learn about what's going on.
Yeah.
Great. Trouble getting down into fact. A lot of rhetoric, a lot of heated rhetoric, a lot of name calling. So I like to kind of language that de-escalate, really.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm sure in our country of origin, more bodily harm in Milwaukee. Likewise,
Yeah.
Unhappy, not having
Like home unless it's dangerous.
right
Yeah.
neighbors that would be fleeing to Canada, to Europe,
Right.
to Asia, to Mexico, by any means necessary.
Let's face it, you don't leave unless you.
Exception is that the immigration process is a matter of getting in line. I think right now, Customs and Immigration is granting citizenship to applications that they've received in December of 1998. Even if I went and stood in line, I'm looking, not me personally, but that people are escaping for.
Well, so, I mean, we're going to talk about language.
Written right now, and I'm not an immigration law shift in status in your country of origin. So you can't unless you are granted while you undergo that.
Then it becomes like a catch-22, because if you're leaving it's too unstable, process, are you being able to go through that process?
You'd initiate that process in any number of countries.
I mean, how deteriorated things might be in a country, there's still a government.
You do it through the. It depends on high conflict times. Because they're concerned about their people's safety as well.
Right.
So it isn't as simple as another frequent myth that we hear about is that we're of a lot of public benefits, and I was looking at some data for the 2014-2015. About 8% of their tax, property tax, sales. There is an estimated, and I want to look at these.
Looking for it, it sounds like they're right now paying more taxes than.
I don't know how much GE is paying.
You know, and actually too, this gives me. Grassroots North Shore is having an event on immigration. And get together and talk about the issues around immigration and diversity. So it's there will be food available at North Shore Presbyterian Church, and from out the particulars.
So, according to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, Wisconsin pay a lot over $71 million in state and local taxes every year. And they estimate that if there were full-scale reform of the immigration system, that would increase to almost $20 million.
Wow.
So, close to $100 million worth of tax revenue if we had.
And as we know, the state could use that. But, by the way, I thought that immigrants, don't they also pay Social Security?
Well, it depends on their work arrangement, how they are getting paid, but most companies that I personally know of are making the FICA contributions.
Yeah.
And that's just a surplus to the Social Security system. Nobody's expecting to collect Social Security.
Right, if you're, if you're an immigrant.
Correct.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's no small number either.
No. And I don't have numbers handy about
Yeah.
how much that is, but if you guys some numbers.
Yeah, right, and we'll have that all posted later.
Great.
Yeah.
We don't have the details. Just anecdotally, I was a small employer and had a couple of Hispanic employees at one time. And would give them their W-2 at the end of the year. Never applied for any sort of return. It was like, and I think it had to do with just how people view the government.
Right.
The difference about how people view the government.
So if there were some over contributions being drawn from their paycheck every 2 weeks or twice a month, those were just staying in the government. They weren't getting claimed and they weren't getting a reimbursement.
I'm sure there were exemptions.
As undocumented for 23 years, Marcos say I've been paying taxes, and I know they take me from my check the 32%. So obviously, there's almost no difference between being documented or documented to pay taxes. basically we pay taxes like everyone,
Right.
but like he said, we
The numbers we're looking at, the working adults, I mean, there's quite a
Correct.
number of children there, so maybe figure about
It's 8 million working adults.
8 million working adults, and imagine the FICA revenue that's bringing into the treasury. And
Plus all the economic movement, right? Because they eat and they shop and they
right,
go watch a movie and,
yeah,
they patronize local businesses just like everybody. And I mean, we're everywhere, right?
We're definitely consumers.
Right.
But then, you look at the factor that 30 out of a pool that was made deeper by immigrants.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then related to that, there's the misconception that I've been able to find it's the opposite. In predominantly immigrant neighborhoods, the criminality rate is lower than surrounding neighborhoods.
Right.
So, undocumented immigrants pay taxes. They are contributing members of society, and
A lot of this anti-immigrant fervor is being whipped up over the idea that they're committing crime. Coming down on places like Los Angeles and San Francisco.
at unemployment statistics, economists agree that anything below 4% is. I'm having trouble, at least in the seeing whose jobs are being taken. That is not. There are workers who are here and people who are out of work over there.
That's more of a factor of geography. If you drive through, get off the main highways and you drive through some, and you'll see like the boarded up downtowns and and the lack of economic activity. It's just that the jobs being taken away by immigrants. It's just there's no jobs to take away.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and there's a takeaway.
Right.
A lot of economic factors here, and hopefully and in order to drive the economy, and the problem is we have not produced children in order to come up into the workforce, and so that's where immigration is could come to the rescue to grow the economy.
Again, against employers are not increasing wages, or they're not creating the jobs, they're not paying. All that money from the tax deduction is the stock market prices, and it's being sucked up by CEOs who get increases based on how high they can drive the stock market. So it's all being put into non-productive situations.
80% of the tax back programs, not improving capital equipment, not raising the salaries of workers for the most part. Some did, but that's really where most of it went, so that whoever can get greater control over that company and ensure the way it worked out. So.
Yeah, I don't have any facts about that. I know the Mexican border with Guatemala is being heavily militarized.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
American immigrants is at an all-time high. The root issue isn't being addressed. That you have displaced people because you've got issues.
But it seems to me that we're driving the drug issue. If we didn't have such a interesting population, that wouldn't be the major issue that's happening in some of those companies. You wouldn't have some of the just profiteers can't make money off the drugs.
Yeah.
That would just totally destroy the effort into productive work. So,
Right. Well, yeah, go ahead.
I would like to add something. For example, in Guatemala, let's kill the rebels. Hey, all the corporations come to Guatemala. After the disagreement, yeah, a lot of corporations get, but what? It's like very, very low. How the people can survive with that kind of...
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Also-
drug trade.
prob-
Yeah, more trade.
Time, it's sometimes I get laughing about to another countries to work in another countries, but corporations can go anywhere. Governments in some parts of Latin America, it's very corrupted corporations. So how to say of crime and corruption. So that's my.
Got this 3,000-mile Canada. How many fences do we have? Montana, and so we visited my daughter's host family in Germany one time, and drove up to Luxembourg to get gas, and it was just like going from Wisconsin to Illinois, and so that's not the case, so I guess it's a matter of what are we trying to fortifying the border? What is it that we have to do this?
It's just all trumped up fear.
Pardon the pun.
Before.
To treat these issues, effectively as economic problems and trying to solve them, you just can't. We can't tolerate everything based. The only thing that matters is profit. That cannot be the only factor. How the economy is driven.
Right.
There have to be. You have to see the economy as a social, as a
Suction that this country is, where we're sucking people up from Mexico and Central America because of the fact that there's stability. Face it, there's a lot of operations here in this country, largely agriculture, but through my career, I've spent time visiting meat plants, packing plants, and the workforce there is, through the years, I've noticed it's gone from to Latino, and just about everyone yanking on the cows are having chickens kicking indoors into 7-Elevens, going into meat packing plants, going into found economic impact on that individual company.
Because of what I do for a living, I try to find analytical frameworks that help predict, test, and then you know what kind of management and immigration specific system that dairy farm. At the end of the day, it's about profits.
Yeah.
So ICE agents aren't taking everybody. They're not clearing the line. They're taking enough people to keep fear, to keep wages low, so that the owners can make more money.
Yeah, so no one is.
We are brave enough to speak up against.
Yeah, well, that can have an impact on the workers at that individual site.
Well, that's slowly changing, but again, going back to this until there's pushback,
Yeah,
and then they'll buck off just a little bit, and then they will continue to take. So that when there is pushback, we don't push them back to where they're comfortable. We push them back to where we're with folks like you, because we want to make sure to strengthen our ties and understand that we need systemic change. Just a Wisconsin thing. Family sustaining wages is a Guatemala thing, it's a Mexico thing, it's a Burma thing.
yeah.
Everybody in the world is concerned about family sustaining wages. And up until now, the nationalist right has been the only faction worldwide that's been able to credibly address the fear that people have of not being able to provide the basic necessities. Nationalism that you see pop in Germany
Right.
is having trouble with the. Clear example is
Yeah.
is a clear. We've been unable to address the growing discomfort of the just about any specific marginalized group, even the left leaning into the Borg, if you will.
Oh, wait, you want to explain that a little bit further?
I don't know that I need to explain it, because as a good said in the movies, stupid is the stupid.
And this is unfortunately an American tradition that goes back to the first wave of immigrants, which I believe are probably American, and that's a whole different deal. But started out where they were given the work is. The problem is that because the feeling should be that what this is all working on is the concept of the other, which has been worked by advantage, and that's unfortunately part of our history as well, is exploiting the fact that these people are different from you, and therefore they don't deserve to have the things.
Why isn't all this wealth that's being created, all this money, why uses it the workers that do it? Why is it all left in, and it just belongs in speculative wealth like it's on Wall Street, where it's just and why, we don't, we've just been sucked into this. Everything is about taxes for working people, about, we've got to pay all these taxes, it's horrible. The issue is not, we should be looking at this, and we should be demanding that money be.
Good point, John, because over the last 30 years on taxes, there really hasn't not been any dramatic as taxes. It tends to go up with inflation. Graph is wages, and so what's happened is, for a number of reasons, and of course and let's face it, everybody who works in a company, or that we always talk about the focus is on the CEO, but the CEO would be able to produce nothing unless they had the work and the smarts of the people working within the company, and so they should also be rewarded for that as well. But there's been a very good job done on people to get their minds off of what the causes of this is, and to blame it on brown people who happen to be immigrants.
And before them, Italians, and before them,
Create competition.
Well, yeah,
Eastern Europeans, and before then.
Germans to some extent, Italians, and then then Latinos, but also along the way. I mean, when you look at the blacks, African Americans moving up in the south.
Trouble speaking about, and we often speak around. They are unwilling immigrants, and I'm glad you used the term voluntary immigrants before. And I was at a recent presentation by Dr. Jelani Cobb, where he said even and then the solution wasn't of their own. So at no time have we gone through the process of fixing unoriginal sin of this country.
Right. Yeah.
And so in the process of pretending that doesn't exist, we fall back into that behavior pattern real easy.
Well, I think what would be real neat, though, is if both situations were to join forces and to talk about how these issues are related and how each community should protect the other.
Right.
That would make it sense. It wouldn't make it sense in the black community. Well, it's just all these, Mexicans coming in and taking jobs, and we can't get them.
A feature of a system of oppression is that the oppressed fight each other.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Okay.
Well,
And the way it's successful for that is to have that happen. And I mean, that's why you get the term white supremacy,
Right.
because they have something to feel supreme about.
So just to bring it back to some of the, I'm sure you guys are familiar with the work that Reverend Barber is doing.
sure.
Yeah, Moral Mondays.
Poor People's Campaign are part of Voces' organization. Voces is closely coordinated with Planned Parenthood. Voces, right, and the Racine.
So that's a very good point. Anti-poverty program is family planning.
Really, the big issue is that in the African American population is the feeling of the intruder that's coming in and taking or they didn't understand why the jobs disappeared in the first place.
Wait,
Why
you're
the
saying
steel
that
and
that
no, I don't saying that. I'm talking about manipulated against each other. We're not really representing the vast
at the
majority.
same time, not real system-wide gaslighting.
Yeah.
That is a feature of the system. Right? I cannot, because he or she may have a view different than the system.
Misunderstanding here what I'm saying. I'm saying that the forces for fighting mass
Yeah, yeah.
incarceration
Mhm.
should be brought together and shown and work together
And
and
we are doing
educated
that.
both sides. When it comes down to it, we're not going to change. Yes,
I would like to
And
ask
we had to work together to do.
if he touched the issues who is suffering mass incarceration. How do you say this effort to punish every and the people they try or communities they say these have the problem, these have the problem, so put them in jail. Why? Because they want to make people understand the reason to how to say to punish people or they say this group of people. But the problem, how to say, to educate or people to say groups because, but we are, how to say, so,
Yeah, I mean, and you know, in terms of making people afraid of certain groups, and you know, especially I think one of the means for doing this is the local news, because the extreme focus on crime, especially here in Milwaukee, every night. Basically, it's you know the phrase "if it bleeds, it leads," and so you have a big focus on crime, and usually people of color are depicted as committing the crimes, and therefore people make certain things because they're basically criminals. You know, and so that's another, I think, another tool that's used in order to create misconceptions about people, and especially again getting back to the fact that. We saw that during the Republican convention, where Trump trotted out these people that were their families were victims of violence. Like you can find 6 or 7 or 8 people or whatever, but statistically, as you pointed out, that's not the reality. Yeah.
Right.
the corporations like a Grupo ALEC is behind to this effort to incarcerate private prisons to put.
You know, and that's one of the biggest scams on the American public is the prison system.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because I'm way behind, because I used to think that I thought it was that we were spending $30,000 a year on incarcerating someone. It's actually $70,000 a year, basically to provide companies with a cheap labor force. So where do we as a society win on something like this? Just about unemployable and unable to contribute, and these problems are that we have to start thinking about these things in a rational manner. That's why we're talking tonight,
Right.
basically. Yeah, that's why we're talking.
What's going on here is different races are the problem. If they can get rid of all that stuff, then everything would be rosy
Yeah.
for 20 years. And, you know, if you hear this stuff, basically a propaganda machine, and local talk radio has been, on the radio. Everybody's been taught all this stuff, and we need to get back on. And what's valuable? You know, taxes are a way we share things that we all need, all right? And the question is, do we share them equally and fairly?
Yeah.
Government is not a fun, government, if it was doing, we could take it back into our own hands, it would do the right thing, and it's serving the needs of the people as opposed to serving the needs of some of the, I'm not talking about all billionaires are not a problem, but we've got some billionaires in this society who have really destructive things on their mind. And they don't want regulation, damn thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, Lee Atwater, who was the Republican strategist, a key argument point for what he was trying to do, lazy minorities who are sucking government employees who happen to be people of color who are also sucking money out of your pocket if you raise taxes.
Right.
Whereas we're seeing the product falling apart in Wisconsin. And
Healthcare falling apart.
Healthcare. There's a lot of profit. I mean, a good example of that is the internet. The internet. Well, no, he didn't, but he did make it possible for the government to get. So it's just the way the system works is it's causing people to.
What we have to do is we have to figure out how to help people create this alternative narrative. And the problem is we must do this, and we don't have 20. It's an attempt to just reduce or eliminate that people have. The vast majority of the people are not necessarily they support the reasonable taxes. There are a bunch of majorities. Are the politicians listening? No.
Well,
because we're not the contributors. We talk about dark money. We have some bad actors in this country.
Around the way we think about things, and that again sort of explains why we're doing this series. People rode around in cars without seat belts,
Right.
and gay people get married. I think you've got some ideas about different ways that we can talk about immigration. Who hasn't been thoroughly processed to become a naturalized citizen, who's in that path. I mean, how should we refer to that situation?
Well, Mario used the acronym LPR, Legal Permanent Resident.
Yeah.
There are, by a lot of estimates, a lot of legal permanent residents in the U.S.
Yeah.
I was listening to the case of I believe he is an Army vet, whose green card, what people normally call green's way a little bit, got into some trouble, spent a couple years in jail, and during the interview, the journalist asked him, well, why didn't you, I mean, that's the question, right? Why didn't you gain your citizenship as soon as you were eligible? And he said, to be honest, I was young. I was a citizen. I didn't understand the difference between having a green card. I'm crystal clear on that.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of education that MOSIS does, what their possibilities are, how they can really grow in our communities. That
Right.
this collective effort is necessary.
Yeah. Well, here's another problem too. Oh wait, you were going to say something about that?
Like in the dairy farms, how important is how important is the work? Basically, some of those people say, so it's one of the reasons they are for legalization and have access to drive license and have live like the families, live alone, work.
Yeah.
And it's just something to add.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the thing is, people could talk about that immigrants are taking away jobs from Americans, but the jobs that they take are pretty darn hard. Working at a dairy farm, and I think they put in 10-hour days, something like that. And not only that, but someone's got to be there to milk the cows every day of the year. And so these are not jobs that are desirable by most Americans, unless you really love cows. And so who's going to do it? That's really the question. And it's people have to ask themselves rationally, who's going to perform those jobs?
I mean, I don't have a problem with this in general, but I think here's one example where things have been, I think we're still do those jobs. That's not true. They just don't want to do them for what people are paid to do them.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
Doing them doesn't get you very far. It doesn't really create a living wage. If we had decent living wages for everything, There wouldn't be an issue of people not wanting to do the work. I mean, people, I was raised on a farm,
Yeah.
and if it was something you could make a living out of, I mean, you're talking about.
I think the rub, when you look at part of what you pay in the store, and economics might prove me wrong, but to raise the wages of people who are doing these jobs, I mean, in fact, and people have gone out and done surveys, Ron, by increasing the wages. People say they'd be willing to do that.
Sure.
Yeah. And that's always.
There's this, downward, they don't care, but it has to do with how much profit, whether they can, how much they can profit out of it.
Yeah.
And it's like, right now, I mean, things are so bad, where was it, wasn't too long ago, the wages of their pilots.
Yeah.
And why aren't you giving that money to us on the stock market?
In that, a lot of us is to retire on, and we've become like a certain return on these portfolios. We're insisting that from our money manager, all contributing to the problem.
There is a major benefit from the stock market, what happens on the stock market.
Yeah.
And even in middle income families, people, I mean, that's part of their retirement.
Right.
And they're concerned about that.
Still not a majority. I mean, I think it's like 40% really have a significant portfolio.
No, right, yeah, the majority of people don't get anything from the stock market.
Or very little, yeah.
Right, or nothing directly, basically. And there's a built-in target. There's an education issue that we need to do, but why would we be supporting a system that's our way to pay for retirement? Do we really need to have a retirement system that's dependent upon a handful of people speculating with everybody's money on the stock market? Is that why we want to have a retirement system based on? I don't think so. Most people would say that. I don't want to worry about what's going on with the stocks and stuff about retirement. I just want to be able to retire and be able to live on a retirement.
Yeah, that's what happened. We switched over from pensions. I mean, it's maybe, everyone always wonders, when did we become a more meaner country? And that might be part of it. The fact that we went from pensions where we didn't worry about it to now and we work in a company, another company gets underpaid, so our performance, our stock, you're getting this tension built up within
that what's happening on the stock market, and it's in there. That's why we broke up banks from just being banks to being investment banks, is because they wanted to have our money that we were dealing with rationally in a bank and savings and stuff, and to be able to use that to fusion. We're allowed to keep just a little bit of that, and the vast majority of it goes to the folks who really control the system. It's the same thing, it's the same logic they do with taxes. Taxes are bad because their taxes are bad. They're going to give us a little bit of a tax break, maybe.
Yeah.
And they take the vast majority.
There's this syndrome that happens with very more, and so they'll want, part of it is they want to see their taxes cut because that enables them to have more money. And so that's because, we used to have ways of pushing back on that, and again, it gets back to gerrymandering and vote suppression, where the people would vote against stuff like this one, and
The
so
vote doesn't count.
yeah, and so you ridiculous tax cut $1 trillion from other countries in order to pay for this. So, well, if what sort of take about immigration and lay out
Every single one of your myth busting. We've got to become more intelligent consumers of information, analyze more at us every day. A higher level of analysis, building do in our daily practice, in our daily. This year, we're
Sunday at the
excellent
at the immigration event at North Shore Presbyterian.
right to flex our muscle, flex our. We want to not the royal them in their pocketbooks. So we're at economically active unless it's in a local corporations for a day before or a day after. Just on Tuesday, vote with your wallet, if you will. This action, the censorship is interested, is we are doing, has applied for 287G status under ICE. Officers as immigration agents throughout the state are looking at this, thinking I can these kinds of policies. And allies in Waukesha on May 1st. Where we show how articulated we are. So if your members, the viewers, we don't ask anybody to do any. We don't want to cause any trouble. Which route we're in perfect coordination with the City of Waukesha Police, all the way it should be. There will be elected officials. There will be candidate society. So if you're interested in talking to other activists, right, that are doing.
Well, it sounds like, Marcos, that for those things to suggest in terms of, yeah.
So those are our two. Other than that, you can visit our website, .org. Sorry, assimilated.
Groups.
Time, treasure.
Yeah,
Talent.
the two major issues for people between economics and yeah.
And I have a ton of if you can, we can come up with a ton of information. That'd be good. They have some really interesting stuff.
Well, I mean, for handing the grassroots North Shore on the first, get your minds wrapped around it, what the facts are, because let's face it, I think that we have us against one another. I mean, the more we start acting like the United States, we're going to be much more stronger for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. And then likewise, if there's anything we can do for you guys, let us know.
Well, yeah, we certainly would love to work much Martha Pincus, because I know she's been working quite closely with FOSIS, and it's just I think in terms of what we all want to achieve, it would be a natural collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for those of you watching out there, get involved with FOSIS as well. So and we really want to let you know that there'll be at the last Wednesday of the month coming up. So we have a couple of topics that we're looking at. If you have a myth that you'd love to see busted, you can put a program around that. So Mario and John. All right.
No,
This would have been freaking embarrassing.
our ability to more than we